Hello, Thomasina. Thank you for being a member for 2 months. Hello, Miss Brenda. Hello, take a deep breath. Hey, Mika Mika. Miss Mika said, I didn't know you were going live because I'm going to push back my time. I didn't know you were going live, Miss Mika. I'm sorry. Hey, sis. Hello, Miss Ellen. Hello, Miss Brenda. Hey, sis. Sis, we're gonna have to exchange numbers so we can correlate times and everything. I don't wanna step on anybody's toes. I want us all to get a, fair shot at going live. Hello, Miss Shauna. Hello, Miss Carol. So, um, I welcome everybody back. That's back from last night. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Hey, Auntie. I wasn't able to get the video back from last night. What happened was it was a copyright issue because I had purchased the video. I wasn't able to use it. But today I have okay, no problem. No problem, Mika. You can. Um I do have tonight, I have the trial, the actual trial. So we'll skim through, and everybody please welcome in Miss Money Talk with Mika. Hello, Miss Andrea. Hello, Miss Terry. I have the actual trial, so we'll skim through the trial, and I have some additional information about the situation. So if you were here with me last night, I ask that you bear with me because I will go over some of the same information that I did go over last night because I had to delete the entire live. Hello, Justice React. Everybody, please welcome in Miss Justice React. So, like I said, if you were here with me last night, I ask that you please bear with me because I will repeat some of the same information that I did repeat last night because I had to delete the entire live. So I want to go over some of the same thing I did last night just to do her story some justice because this is a friend of mine. So I want to do her story justice. Hey, Mom. Hello, Miss Patricia. Miss Michelle said Mika Cash App is Miss Mika 313 in case y'all want to donate anything for her hard work because YouTube be on some blood. Thank you, sis. Hello, Auntie Shirley. And thank you all for watching the video from earlier that I put on Premiere. It was a older live. But like I said, somebody been reporting my videos, so I have to put them on private till they give me the green light again. To repost them. So I appreciate you all for who rewatched them. Thank you very much. But I'm not going to hold you all up. I'm going to get this live started. So I'm going to start off again by reading Miss July's obituary very swiftly. Like I said, please bear with me if you were here last night. So our beloved July was born on August 25th, 1982 in Detroit, Michigan to Jocelyn Johnson and the late Larry Johnson. July received her high school diploma from Henry Ford High School in June 2000. On August the 15th, 2000, July gave birth to her pride and joy, Kiera Johnson, also known as KJ, with the late Carrie Crittenton. July later furthered her education by attending the National Institute of Technology, receiving her certification as a medical assistant. She was employed at the Accredited Health. In 2014, July accepted Christ and joined Triumph Church under the direction of Pastor Salman Noach. She attended church service faithfully and shared scriptures and prayers with her loved ones. July had a heart of gold. She always cared about others and was well loved by many. She lived her life to the fullest. She loved to hang out with her girlfriends and what they called each other the It Girl crew. She was well traveled and loved to shop. And you definitely would never see her without her hair, nails, and eyebrows done. Anybody who knew July was aware of Kiara and her mother Jocelyn were her heart, and that her big brother Jameer, Mayor such and such, was always her protectors. There was an unspoken bond between them that could never be broken. On Friday, July 13, 2017, July departed this life to be with the Lord. Her father, Larry Johnson, and her sibling, Jovan Snurling, preceded her in death. She leaves to cherish her loving memory, her daughter, Kiara Johnson, mother, Jocelyn Johnson, puppy Ever, siblings, Janika Top, husband, Anthony, Jameer Chapman, wife, Deborah, Tiffany Harrell, husband, Michael, Janira Snarling, Tamika Marshall, David Johnson, best friend like a sister, Rolanda Dix, nieces Tony and Delanda, nephews Malik and Katai, grandparents Lawrence and Bernice Davis, her significant other Terrell, and a host of great aunts, great uncles, cousins, and friends. So, hello, Miss Wanda. Hello, Wheezy22. So I'm going to start off by reading this. And so, as I told you all yesterday, this whole murder case was an act of jealousy. July was unalived by her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, the mother of his two children. It was a murder for hire. She talked about it with her new boyfriend and another young man, and they plotted, premeditated to kill her as she left out for work. It was initially thought that the boyfriend, July's current boyfriend, he was the first one arrested um, and charged with her murder. So I'll read that to you all. So it says police in suburban Detroit first had convicted drug dealer Jimmy Terrell Latner as the prime suspect in the 2017 murder of his girlfriend July Johnson, before eventually charging Latner's ex-girlfriend and two other per sources. Latner is out on bail awaiting trial on his own on a weapons possession case stemming from the investigation into July slaying. So remember I told you all that Marcy was with Terrell before he went to prison the first time. And before he went in, he was running allegedly some type of like big time drugs, thing. And she was used to living the life that July was living before he had went in. And so she was holding him down per se while he was in there. And when he came home, she was expecting to live that lifestyle that she was accustomed to before he went back in. But when he came home, he didn't want to be with her anymore. So she was jealous because he was giving another woman what she once had. So allegedly for 2 years, she stalked July and was harassing her because she wanted that lifestyle back. So she planned and plotted on her to take her out with her boyfriend and another young man. But because Terrell was known, in the streets, and he wasn't cooperating when law enforcement first arrived, they initially assumed, because of his background and the way he was acting, that he was a suspect first. So and then it says the Johnson case is a rift with compelling of vexing and intricate subplots regarding the crime itself, the alleged players involved, and the way it's been adjudicated through the court system. The case is on its second judge, and the start of the trial has been postponed 4 times in the past 16 months. Mind you, this started in 2017. Johnson, 34, was gunned down on the morning of January 13, 2017, outside of Latner's condominium in Warren, Michigan. Marcy Griffin, Latner's ex-girlfriend, George Gigi Ryder, and Eric Gibson are facing first-degree homicide charges in the case. Griffin was allegedly feuding with Latner and Johnson over Johnson's treatment of Griffin and Latner's child, supposedly. Thank you so much, Miss Wanda. You're greatly appreciated. Gibson's DNA is allegedly on the murder weapon, and prosecutor alleged that Ryder acted as the middleman for Griffin in hiring Gibson to kill Johnson. Ryder and a folk of heroes soared on the streets of Detroit East Side, who served as a prison stint for federal narcotic trafficking in the 1990s, have been in the government's crosshair for years. So I'm going to go down and tell y'all a little bit of background on the ex-boyfriend. The 44-year-old Latner once led what was known as the World Domination Gang, a drug crew operating on the Detroit Northwest Side in the late 1990s and early 2000s. He did 6 years in prison for peddling cocaine and heroin and got out in 2010. So he was a big time like drug guy, and he was peddling a lot of money on the west side of Detroit from where I'm from. So Marcy was accustomed to living this big time, she was allegedly involved in this with him. And so she was accustomed to living this big bougie, get whatever she want type of life. So when she saw July living the same life, they were going on trips. If you go on her Facebook page, you will see, her always keeping herself together. They were going on trips. She had nice cars, nice clothes, but she always had this stuff before Latner even came along, but she just assumed that, he was providing this lifestyle for her. So that jealousy sank in when she wasn't getting the same thing. So I'm just going to stop rambling on, and I'm going to play the trial for you all. And I'm going to skip through it randomly because we're not going to watch the whole hour thing. So I'm going to play it. Hello, Miss Shonda. Hello, A's mom. Hello, Miss Ann.
Fifth Amendment in this matter is in good faith, and it's our position that he should not be required to testify. If the court is to rule against us in this matter, it's our request that the court stay the effect of its order so I can file an emergency appeal to the circuit court in order to have a circuit court judgment.
Your Honor, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your in-chambers conference. As Mr. Royal indicated, we have extensively argued that in chambers. I see Mr. Royal's argument as twofold. One is he has the right to claim the fifth based on potentially being a suspect.
Okay, that's Latner right there. That's Tyrell. That's the boyfriend, her current boyfriend.
The murder investigation of Joanne Johnson.
I agree. As the attorneys, first and foremost, and thank you for your passion and representation. First,
All right, I'm going to pop in here just to explain. I was typing it to you, but it'd be faster if I just explain what's going on. Right now, 3 people are charged in what police are saying is a murder for hire situation. What's pretty unusual is that right now a defendant is actually taking the stand, and that's that man you saw up there in front of the mic. This is another man that's charged and the woman is charged as well. Those are the three people. I'll go back and explain the case in the comments section, but it's pretty unusual for a defendant to take the stand in what is a preliminary examination. That determines if there's enough probable cause, if there's enough evidence to carry on with the case and move it forward. I'll continue to update you in the comments section, so check that out.
Yes. Thank you. Once again, now say your name for me.
Jim Ladner,
Please spell your full name, sir.
JimTerrell, Ladner, Lattner.
Your witness, Mr. Federer. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
I withdraw my objection.
Thank you. How are you today, sir? Nice to see you again. Sir, I'd like to ask you a question if we knew a person by name of July Johnson.
I object to that question, and I advise my client to assert his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent in response to that question.
Objections overruled. Answer the question, sir. Did you know a person by name of July Johnson, sir?
I advise my client not to answer.
Thank you. Answer the question. Answer the question, sir. There's no privilege to whether you know a person.
It's clear Mr. Ladner does intend to follow my advice and does not intend to answer that question.
Okay. Mr. Federer. Your Honor, may counsel and I approach? Sure.
All right, so it looks like counsel is talking with the judge. This happens a lot in cases where three people are charged in the same situation. So there's a lot of, working those kinks out, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So this proceeding will be a little bit more trickier than others, if it was just one person charged.
Did he say
And they said tomorrow.
That's Marcy.
Fusion parked in front of residence with a blanket covering an individual to be on the passenger side of the vehicle, which would have been the west side of the vehicle.
Okay. And other than yourself, what other officers were present?
On the initial response was myself and my partner, Officer Rexford, C. Rexford, and there were some traffic units also responding. I'm not sure which officers were on those.
And again, I'm sorry, specifically, what obviously, and again, I might be asking obvious questions, but in your words, what was the first thing that caught your attention?
Again, so we saw a white vehicle, we saw a blanket lying next to it, some individuals in the lawn. We walked up, lifted the blanket, and observed a female lying underneath it with a number of apparent gunshot wounds.
And did you encounter any other person that was on or near the property at that point?
Yes, there was a black male, we identified as a Mr. Latner, the victim's boyfriend, and a white female that lived at a neighboring residence. It was Ms. Morgan.
Okay. What, if any, information was well, first of all, what was the state, the emotional state of the black male that you encountered?
Very, very excited, kind of, distraught all over the place. He was screaming to somebody on the phone when we pulled up, and yelled, "Someone shot her."
I'm handing what's marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 1, just a picture of it. People's Proposed Exhibit 1. Officer, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that, a picture of? What is it depicting?
That's 30562 Bergway, and that is the white Ford Fusion that the victim was lying on the passenger side.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the way the property looked in question?
Yes.
Venue has been marked as People's Proposed 3 and People's Proposed 2. Just hold on a minute. First, I'll start with 3. Same residence, just a different angle. And People's Proposed 2. What does that highlight?
That is the front passenger door of the Ford Fusion. There's a sort of bullet ricochet in the door and then bullet flow.
You were not an evidence type. You were not responsible for any processing of the scene, were you?
No, sir.
Are these each pictures 1 through 3 fair and accurate representations of the way the property in the current question was on the morning that you arrived?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admittance.
No objection.
No
Yeah,
objection.
No objection.
Hearing no objections, proceed People's 1, 2, and 3 with evidence.
After you uncovered the blanket, you indicated the blanket was covering an unknown female to you,
At that time, unknown females.
but it was clear that her condition was what to you?
Deceased, there was no pulse, no breath, a large gunshot into the top of the head, one appeared to be a gunshot into the thigh.
Okay. And what, if anything, happened next in terms of proper procedure? I assume it, even though that was, there were obvious signs of severe trauma to you, did EMS respond?
Yes, we immediately requested warrant fire, our sergeant, and evidence technician, and then requested other units to start blocking off the scene.
Okay. And what, if anything, happened with the person that you learned to be Mr. Latner? What is your responsibility, or your fellow officer's responsibility? What are you going to do with Mr. Latner at the scene?
He was, shortly after, he was escorted to the rear of a patrol car, just for detention, just as seen, he was on scene. So,
Okay. And at some point, did some detectives arrive?
yes,
Is it fair to say Detective Bozak and Detective Rushton arrived?
yes,
Were you on the scene for quite some time that morning?
yes,
Were you able to witness the EMS people start working on the injured female and ultimately take her away in an ambulance?
yes,
You remained on the scene after that took place?
yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further from this witness at this time.
Coach Clark?
Judge, I have more questions, and I believe just for moving forward to be expedient, because I will probably have the least amount of questions with brother counsel. I think I was going to ask my questions last on cross, if that was okay with the court.
That's fine with me, but
Yeah.
we'll continue, we'll maintain the same order each time, so who's gonna go first?
I'll go first. Thank you, Your Honor.
That's
All
fine.
right, so you're up.
Thank you. Kevin Samowski for the record. Good morning, officer.
Morning.
The address shown in exhibit number 1, would you repeat that address again, please?
It was 30562 Bergway Trail,
And what city is that in?
Warren, Michigan.
Now, you indicated that basically you made the scene, preserved the scene for the detectives, right?
Yes,
You didn't see my client, Marcy Griffin, in the area at all, did you?
not to my recollection.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Kulisek, did you interview Mr. Latner at the scene?
No, other than a brief question asking where was the gun. We didn't know it at the point that it was a possible suicide was one of the dispatch calls it could have been. That's all I asked. Where's the gun? He said, I didn't shoot her.
Excuse me, he said what?
I did not shoot her.
He said he did not shoot her. Do you know if he made any other statements?
I did not speak with him any further.
Okay, did you see my client, Mr. George Ryder, at the scene that morning?
Not to my recollection.
Did you see Mr. Ryder at all after this incident?
Not to my recollection.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. You already said you're
No questions, Your Honor.
satisfied, right? Okay.
Yes.
You're excused, so thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Hall, wait.
No redirect.
Mr. Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. No,
Thank you.
excused.
As an evidence type on this case.
Yes.
Where was that?
I also responded to St. John Oakland's emergency room for photos.
Okay, and what was the purpose of you going to that location?
I was requested by the detectives who were on scene or handling it to be with the victim and photographing the victim at the hospital.
And were you able to actually get to the hospital and actually take care of those responsibilities?
Yes, sir.
Did anything significant happen, or can you explain to the court what exactly you did once you were able to be in the same room at the hospital with the victim. At that point, was she already pronounced deceased?
Yes, sir.
And you were able to identify her as a July Laurie Johnson. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And you identified her in your report as a black female, 5'3", 145, DOB, 825, 1982. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Please continue. Besides identifying her or taking pictures, what else did you do at that point?
Initially, I take basically multiple photos from the head, neck, abdomen, chest, torso, basically overall pictures of her body. Then move it into her more, I guess, injuries that she sustained.
Okay. And all those evidence were preserved, or excuse me, all those photographs were preserved as evidence for this case?
Yes, sir.
Besides the photographs, do you remember anything significant regarding her clothing? What happens to her clothing?
It was brought to my. I was told that the medical examiner would want to examine those garments, her clothing, as part of the autopsy.
And were you the one responsible for taking possession of the clothing?
Yes, sir. I was responsible for collecting and packaging the garments that she had on that day, or that morning.
And besides the actual clothing, was there anything else that happened during your collection of the clothing that was significant as a potential evidentiary issue in this case?
Yes.
You found? What was that?
With the regarding the bra that she was wearing that morning, when it came off, a projectile or bullet came out of the bra and landed on her on the hospital bedding that she was on.
And did you take that piece of evidence into custody?
Yes, it was photographed as it was on the bedding and then placed into a sterile brown envelope.
Besides that one projectile, was there any other projectile that was found at that point?
Yes, in her undergarments, when they were collected, another projectile bullet fell onto the bedding.
And did you take that into evidence as well?
Yes, it was photographed and packaged separately in the same brown envelope.
Is it fair to say that from that point after you collect and turn it into evidence and turn it over to the detectives, it's the detective's responsibility for all the follow-up in terms of sending to the lab, getting test results, et cetera? Is that fair to say?
Yes, it was going to be somebody else's processing of the bullet that was required.
Besides the two projectiles that we were talking about, did you, going back to the scene, did you see anything or find anything of significance regarding possible gunshots?
Yes.
Please explain to Judge Chuba, what else did you find?
With regards to gunshots, the white vehicle that I observed the victim laying next to had multiple bullet holes in the side and rear, as well as spent casings under the car and in the grass around the area that we found her on the ground. All indicated multiple shots were fired at this person near this car.
And as part of your responsibilities as an evidence tech and the other officers on the scene, were each and every one of those casings taken into custody for potential evidentiary purposes?
Yes, they were collected and individually placed in envelopes and tagged for evidence. Yeah.
And again, as I asked further about the two projectiles that were found, all those casings and stuff are put in the case file, turned over to the detectives, and it's for the detectives to ultimately get all the testing and lab work done. Is that fair to say?
Yes, my responsibility was to preserve it as it was found without contaminating.
Okay. And again, you took a series of pictures regarding all your work that day at both locations.
Yes, like many photos were taken.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
If I understand correctly, your initial reason for going to the scene was basically as a police officer responding unit type of thing, or was it as evidence tech?
Well, with the nature of the run coming out as shots being fired with an actual injured person,
Right.
yeah, my both responsibilities. I'm a police officer with the assigned duties as an evidence tech.
Okay. But once you were there, the situation, as far as you saw, there were already at least 8 officers there. That part was under control, right?
I guess, yeah, I mean, it was getting under control, but there was still a lot of confusion about
Okay.
where somebody might be or how it was taking place.
And then you kind of morphed it to your evidence tech role.
Yeah, once the scene was getting secured by the officers responding, it then became my responsibility to start preserving evidence and
Okay.
protecting the scene.
So did you have to go get a special unit, like a vehicle that had all your camera and evidence collection kits, things like that, or was that already with you?
No, I am assigned a evidence tech vehicle loaded with gear, supplies to handle scenes.
Okay, great. Did you go into the house at, is it 35062 Birdway?
305, yes. I did go eventually make it into the house with the detectives.
And did you collect any evidence there? Let me ask you differently. Did you collect any firearms in that house?
No, I did not collect any firearms.
Did you see any firearms in that house?
I did not see any firearms in that house.
Okay. And then you were asked to go to, I believe, St. John Oakland Hospital.
Correct.
And you identified, you told the prosecutor you were able to identify the person that was there as July Johnson.
That's correct.
How were you able to make that identification?
I believe she had a wristband that might have been on, but I believe the initial name came from the boyfriend at the scene who identified her as her boyfriend as July.
Okay. And because you had never seen her before, have you?
Never.
Okay. And when the boyfriend was at the scene, was he in custody at that time?
No, he was detained and information was trying to be obtained from him.
And was he detained in the back of a patrol vehicle?
I don't recall seeing him in a vehicle at that time.
Okay. So when you said you believe the name was supplied by the boyfriend, that was not to you directly, but another officer told you, hey,
Yes,
this guy says it's Julie Johnson.
correct.
And that guy being Jim Terrell Latner, correct? Do you know who the boyfriend's name is?
I haven't I have not had
Okay.
any really contact with the boyfriend.
That's fair enough. After taking photographs at the hospital, did you return to the scene? The prosecutor asked you about photographs that you took regarding a vehicle and suspected holes. Was that done in your first time at the scene? Or did you go from the scene to the hospital and then return to the scene?
Once a second evidence tech showed up around 8 o'clock, sometime around there when the victim was at the hospital is when detectives requested an evidence tech to the hospital.
Right.
So the scene was left to another evidence tech who was also in the same responsibilities of protecting and preserving evidence and documentation. So we were partners on the scene, but I had to leave to go to the hospital.
Oh, I see. But did you return back to the scene?
Yes, I did return back.
And you're the one that took the photographs of the, or was that your partner of the vehicle?
I took the photos.
Okay, great. Do you know whose car that was?
No. I believe it was hers, but I never officially looked at the registration.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Samowski here was asking you about Mr. Latner and whether or not he was in custody. Do you remember that?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was Mr. Latner in custody?
I believe he was detained for questioning about circumstances since he was pretty much an eyewitness or supposed to be in the vicinity when the shooting happened.
Was he also a suspect?
I don't know if he was considered a suspect at that time. I know he was with the victim when we arrived.
Did you speak to Mr. Latner at all?
No, I did not.
Okay. That was being handled by some other officers?
I believe it was all handled by the detectives who came in and interviewed him or talked to him on the scene.
So I think your testimony was there was at least 8 or more officers on the scene. Is that when you arrived?
Yes.
Okay. And some of those were uniformed officers like yourself and some were detectives. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And so it's your testimony that the detectives you believe were the ones that interviewed or were interviewing Mr. Latner about what had happened.
Right.
Okay. And your role, you said, was to secure the scene by putting yellow tape around, correct?
That was part of it.
Okay. What else did you do?
Well, part of it was making sure there was enough officers assigned to keep anybody from coming into the scene or into close to the scene. So we did have assigned like officers to the north, to the south, just to keep the evidence tape secure for people walking in.
Okay, so there were officers that were positioned around what you consider to be
Miss Justice, if you're still here, are they trying to see if they secure the scene properly? Is that the reason why they're asking the officer all these questions?
the crime scene?
Right.
Okay, and that was part of your job to do that? To assign officers or?
No, it was just pretty much standard police assistance that we actually didn't know if the shooter was still within distance, was on foot, is what we were being told. So yeah, we were on alert of a shooter who could still be in the area, but at the same time, we're preserving what we had in front of us.
Okay. Now, just so we're clear, besides taking photographs, you said you found 2 projectiles on the decedent's body or from the decedent's body?
Yes.
Okay. And that was at the hospital?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any other projectiles, bullets, spent casings that you collected?
Not at the hospital.
Okay.
I did not see any.
Did you see any at the condo location?
I saw casings. I didn't see bullets.
Okay, and how many casings did you see?
I would have to refer to my report regarding the exact number, but I know there was multiple, more than 2.
And were you the officer that then seized the casings and secured them for evidence purposes? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else that you did besides gather the casings, the spent bullets at the hospital, and take photographs as part of your duties as an evidence tech?
Yes, myself and evidence tech Sullivan, we also did a mapping of the scene with Total Station, where GPS coordinates are used to pinpoint pieces of evidence relevant or the layout of the area, and they're recorded on points that can be put into a map for later visual or relations of evidence to each other.
And you did that?
I assisted Evidence Tech Sullivan with that process.
Okay. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, officer. Thank you. Do you know what my client Eric Gibson looks like?
No.
So it's safe to say you wouldn't be able to recognize whether he was or was not at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You mentioned that you returned back to the scene after going to the hospital. Once that was completed, and obviously besides your testimony today, have you had any other involvement or interaction with this case or its investigation?
With regards to this, I came back the next day and still assisted with the packaging and preparing of the evidence for later transporting or to the crime lab if it was needed.
And by that evidence that you collected the second day, would that have been the shell casings you mentioned?
All that stuff was collected
Okay.
when we leave. It was just the amount of evidence that we had to be packaged, and that's time consuming and takes a long time.
Was that at the scene the second day when you returned?
No, I didn't return to the scene the second day. I
Was that the
returned
station?
To the station's evidence tech lab.
Understood. While you were in the process the first day, when the young lady was found, did you see any firearms at the scene where you were at?
I did not see any firearms.
And during your testimony just a moment ago, you mentioned that you were worried about safety, and you said, we were told the suspect may be on foot. Do you recall who made that statement that there may be a suspect on foot?
Yes, from the officers on scene, they were getting information from neighbors who thought they saw somebody running in a direction. I believe it was north.
Okay. You weren't involved in interviewing any witnesses, were you?
No.
And then you mentioned the Total Station. Is that an application that you use?
It is for major crimes and fatal accidents.
And that's used for purposes of graphing or mapping out a scene and things of that nature?
That's correct.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
When Mr. Szymanski first started asking you questions, he specifically said 35062 Bergway. The proper address is 30562 Bergway. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, correct.
Second of all, second counsel asked you a series of questions that you couldn't remember the number of cases without reviewing your report. Your Honor, if I may approach. You recognize what I've handed you?
Yes, this is my report that I completed on this incident.
Does it remind? Location 30562 Bergway Trail. I took a few pictures of the out.
So when you
Canine partner was able to do in the field?
Yes.
Approximately how many times do you think you've testified regarding tracks?
Regarding tracks, I think it was just one other time regarding tracks, most of it's got copies.
Okay. But he is trained as a tracking dog?
Yes.
And at some point, did you utilize that canine and start a track?
Yes.
And what, if anything, what results did you have? What were the conditions like? What do you think you were able to do, and how did you perform your duties?
The conditions were cold. I believe there was some snow and frost on the ground. I started the track. He picked up scent. He proceeded east through the yards.
Let me stop you for a second.
Sure.
I assume that before you go off in a certain direction, you gathered much information from the fellow officers that you got, information that they learned from potential witnesses, et cetera?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So
we like to have a starting location of where the suspect was last seen so you can establish some kind of track.
Okay. So where you supplied certain information from the responding officers and whatever other information they were able to collect?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So based on that, did you go off in a certain way?
Yes, I did.
Please continue.
They said the suspect ran east from the location where I started my track. My dog tracked east across the yards to Heritage Parkway. He then continued south on the grass on the west side of Heritage Parkway. He then continued west through, I guess it would be the south end of Bergway Trail. There's some houses there in a brush area. He continued west through those, through that area, kind of circled back around to Bergway Trail east of, I believe it's Hawkeye's Trace, where he showed, then he showed some signs of scent loss in that area.
Okay. At some point, I know this is not your city, and you may not be as familiar with that area as you are within your own city, but was it towards the direction of LA Fitness?
Not at that time, no.
Okay.
Well, it was south, so it was south, but then he went west after going south.
Okay.
So initially he was going south toward that area, but then he went west.
Okay. At some point, did you find something that you thought may have been of evidentiary value for the Warren Police Department?
Yes. Well, after we lost scent of the track, then I proceeded with what we call an article search.
Can you
and
please explain?
Sure. An article search is the dog's looking for any evidence that might have been discarded or left behind by a suspect that fled from the scene. What they're looking for is fresh human odor, anything with fresh human odor on it. So we're searching the area for those types of articles.
And were you able to find anything?
Yes, after, like I said, after the track, we began the article search. I began walking south along Heritage Parkway. On the east side of Heritage Parkway, there's a brush, trees and brush area there. We came to a trail that was just north of 30058 Heritage Parkway and just east of Fox Run Circle. There's a little trail there. I was walking along that trail. My dog was searching along the wood line in the brush area, and he went down into the brush area a couple feet off the trail, and he alerted to an article on the ground.
And I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Proposed 8. The way he alerted regarding that, does that have any significance about the prior track you're on?
No, not the prior track goes on. This is different. We use different.
Done after the glove was.
I did some more searching in the.
Started off with a bang.
The article search eventually led you to the glove, okay? And after you found that glove, did you continue your article search, or were you done at that point?
I did a little bit more article search in that area.
How much longer did you do that article search until you sort of ended your
Another
search?
5 minutes or so.
And do you know, in relation to where the gun was found, was that an area that your animal actually had already article searched and it was found on a subsequent day, or was it somewhere else?
I do not know where it was found in relation to where I searched.
Okay. You mentioned that there were other canines out there, or 2 others. Do you know of any article that they may have uncovered during their searches?
I do not know that they found anything.
Do you know whether they were doing article searches only or tracking as well?
They were not tracking. I asked them to assist with article search because we had a pretty big area to search.
Okay. And you mentioned just for my information, you said before casting the animal. What do you mean? What does casting mean when you have a canine?
You kind of let them, they're on a lead, which is a leash, long leash. You kind of let them circle the area and you watch their behavior. And if they pick up an odor, then they'll show us, give us some indications and a sign that, hey, there's something here. Let's go. Let's continue tracking.
Okay.
So you just kind of, like I said, circle them around the area just to see if he picks up on odor. They can just so we go back and we do that. And a lot of times they pick up.
Okay.
They don't.
And in this case, you did do the cast, the animal picked up the scent, and that's where you did the tracking in that direction?
The initial track, yes,
Okay.
but not for the articles.
Correct.
That's it.
Correct. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Rock?
Nothing further from this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Take the vote, Your Honor.
Okay, y'all. So that was just a little testimony for what happened, what they found on the scene when they pulled up to the scene, what they saw. Essentially, they say it was a love triangle. Griffin, who was the ex of Johnson's boyfriend at the time, they say authorities says that Griffin arranged for Johnson to be killed by enlisting the help of the new boyfriend, Ryder, who hired Gibson to carry out the murder. They said it was a brutal attack. When authorities found Johnson, she had been shot several times. There were multiple gunshots to her torso, one to her forehead. So when we arrived to the funeral, she had a veil covering up her casket, so we couldn't see directly to the casket. And she was adorned and she looked like a princess. It was premeditated. They had texted one another previously before the crime. One on the day July was killed, Ryder drove Gibson to the neighborhood and parked her car by the LA Fitness. Gibson then took the nature trail to Johnson Street. He shot the woman as she left her boyfriend's home and was getting in her car around 7:30 a.m. Chilling text messages were sent between Griffin and Ryder just hours before the murder was carried out. Ryder, good morning, sunshine. Today is a beautiful day, Friday the 13th. Griffin, laugh out loud. Ryder, I hope you understand. Griffin, everything but I understand. And Gibson tried to toss the evidence. As Gibson fled the scene of the crime, he tossed gloves and a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun along the trail he had come on before heading back to Ryder's vehicle. Investigators with the K-9 unit later searched the area and found the evidence. Gibson claimed innocent. Despite the conviction, Gibson had alleged that he is innocent. My condolences to the family for their loss, Gibson said. I hope they find the person who committed the heinous crime. Michigan State Police and Warren Police illegally obtained my DNA and forced evidence against me to make it look like I committed this crime. Johnson's mother speaks out. At the sentencing for the crew, several Johnson family members spoke out about how much pain they were in after losing her. What was so much hatred for? Her mother, Pamela Johnson, asked. How could you, as a human being, have so much hatred in you? She later added, you know your role, your part in this. You have to live with it every day. So at the end of this, All three of them were charged in the shooting of July Johnson. Eric Gibson, 24, is charged with first-degree murder, felony firearm, and received and concealed firearms. Marcy Griffin, 46, and her boyfriend, 58, George Ryder, are also charged with first-degree murder. Yeah. Hello, Miss Florida Red. Hello, Moral That Girl. Miss Kim says, gosh dog again, I missed the show. Miss Florida Red said, hello, Mika and Chat. I stopped in and give you a view. Talk to you later. Thank you so much. Miss Andrea said, oh, wow, Mika sending prayers. Thank you. Miss Shirley says, so sad. Hey, sis. Miss Florida Red says, sorry, I meant to catch you on the next live. Okay, thank you. Miss Morrow says, hello, this is sad prayers to you and the family. Thank you so much. Let's just continue to pray for her daughter, Kiara, and Kiara's grandmother who has custody of her. Who has been taking care of her. Kiara's father is also deceased. He was also murdered before July in a senseless murder, also here in Detroit. So we just want to keep the family uplifted in prayer, and especially the daughter. Miss Lawanda says, hit the like button, cousins, please, and thank you. I just thank you all for joining me here as I relive this tragic event, and hopefully I did her family some justice by bringing some awareness to her story. I love you all, cousins, from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you for joining me again as I try to redo this again tonight. I will see you all again very soon. I hope you all have a peaceful night. Good night.